don't you think?
Hey everybody, this is TJR hanging out with Superfan.
Hey.
And we got the little green guy here. And so last night we watched Frankenstein for the first time. And we reacted to it. And tonight we watched Bride of Frankenstein for the first time.
Yes.
And kind of like with the first film, and we've seen so many scenes from these films that it almost feels, to a certain extent, we feel like we have seen them. We kind of basically know the stories. And of course, I know the story from the original book as well.
And they're such a part of popular culture, too.
They've been reinterpreted so many times. And we didn't mention that in the last video. The It's Alive scene has been reinterpreted in so much media.
And that soundbite has been used so many times.
And in fact, this sequel even reinterprets the It's Alive scene a couple of times within this sequel. It does it with the mini character who is one of the housemaids in the Frankenstein household. And it does it with Dr. Frankenstein himself later when they're creating the bride.
Yeah, he says it again.
He says it again, yes. And it's interesting to note, the original film came out in 1931. This film came out in 1935. So it's about 4 years later.
Yeah.
And I was kind of curious, why such a long delay? It appears that there was certainly a lot of interest in the sequel not too long after the original premiered, which meant it did extremely well in the box office. So there was a lot of interest in making a sequel. But there were various script problems that delayed it. And also, the original director did not want to make the sequel. Carl Laemmle really wanted him to do it, felt he was the only person that could do this job and make this film and make it successful. Basically, the director kind of made a deal saying, I'll make this movie if you let me make a movie that I want to make, which is kind of what happened. That's kind of what happened with Tim Burton. He agreed to make Batman Returns if they would let him make Edward Scissorhands. It was kind of a deal, yeah.
Well, that happens a lot in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. So this film, Bride of Frankenstein, opens with a dramatized scene of author Mary Shelley discussing with
her husband and Lord Byron.
Okay, thank you. Basically telling them that the story of Frankenstein doesn't end where it ends, that there's more to tell. And she starts, and what's weird about this, while they're talking about this, we see scenes from the 1931 film. And then she says, well, there's still more of the story to be told. And of course, then she tells them the rest of the story. And the film picks up pretty much where the last film left off, except that it completely ignores that rather abrupt ending scene that I mentioned in the last video, where we're back at the Frankenstein home and
Elizabeth is fussing over
Henry Frankenstein, and Henry Frankenstein's father, who's the burgomaster, as they refer to him.
No, he was...
Oh, he was Baron. He was the Baron. That's right. He was Baron Frankenstein. He basically plays the scene himself with the staff there toasting the family. We only see an indication of Dr. Frankenstein in the distance. After we filmed that video, the next day, which is today, I did a little research, and it appears that was just basically like a double, because you don't see him very clearly. He's way in the background. It wasn't the actual actor. It was just a double. And apparently the studio wanted that little ending tacked on there to give it a happy ending, which does appear pretty obvious.
Yeah.
Looking back on it. So anyways, though, but it kind of ignores that, because basically it picks up at the end as the windmill's burning and they take Henry Frankenstein's body to the castle. They think he may be dead.
They're taking him home to die.
Basically, they think he may be dead, but then he's alive. He's revived when he sees Elizabeth, who's played by a different actress in this film.
Yeah, her hair color changed and everything.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. I mean, it's been about 4 to 5 years since the last film. Audiences probably don't remember.
Yeah, it's not like today where you can go and rent a movie.
Yeah. Well, even now, we sometimes will have characters recast by with a different actor, and it's just one of those things. You know, sometimes it happens. You have to do it.
Well, yeah, but they now they try and kind of match them up. The first Elizabeth was a blue-eyed blonde.
Yeah.
And this Elizabeth was a brunette.
Yeah. Well,
You know.
that's okay. That's okay. I'm reminded of that scene in Iron Man 2 where the one character, and I can't think of his name now, but he's Tony Stark's friend. He's the military guy. I'm thinking of the character Rhodey from the Iron Man films, who's played by 2 different actors in the first and the second film. And in the second film, when Tony Stark sees him, there's a line where he says, "Oh, Rhodey, I almost didn't recognize you." And it's just a little in-joke regarding the fact that it's a different actor playing the character. But yeah, these things happen. But here's the thing, though. We've got this scene with Mary Shelley and her husband, as you said, and the other fellow who's, I forget what you said.
Lord Byron?
Lord Byron, thank you. We've got that scene there where it's set during the 1800s and around 1816, roughly, which is, I think, when she wrote the book.
Yeah, 1815 the book was written.
Okay, so it's set during that time, and they are in period costume. Yet this film, which they mention, and we see scenes from as they're discussing it, seems to be taking place many years later, because the clothing is quite different.
Yes.
I didn't think about that much when I watched the first film, but I think about it a lot now. I thought about it a lot now while I was watching the second film because of that weird inconsistency, and that got me thinking back on the first film, how inconsistent that looked too.
And in case you're wondering, it was a dark and stormy night.
Yes, as we watch this film tonight, there is a thunderstorm and a lightning storm outside our house.
So you may be hearing that, but
yeah, you might hear it, but it's perfect atmosphere for the film tonight.
We arranged it.
But yeah, there's this weird inconsistency.
We've got
this introduction taking place around 1815, 1816, and then the film itself is taking place quite some time later. And even within the time period that it's taking place in, at times costuming seems inconsistent.
You've got everything from like turn of the last century clothing that you would see in the 1800s to the 1930s at the time that it was made.
Yeah, because you were mentioning there's a scene where Elizabeth is dressed like it's the 1930s.
Yeah, she was dressed in modern costume, like street clothes.
Yeah, it's really inconsistent, and it's just, I could ignore it to a certain extent with the first film, but here it just becomes really distracting.
Yeah, a lot of continuity issues.
Yeah. Now, again, just like the first film, same director, visually, the film looks amazing in my opinion. And this is also fully restored, audio and video fully restored. But not just the restoration looks great, but I mean, just like I said before, the staging, the lighting, the composition of frame. This director had a great visual style.
Yes, it did.
And it makes me want to see other films that he may have directed just because of that. Yet again, we have weird inconsistencies like we did before. In the films, not too long, and within the film's beginning, Dr. Frankenstein is paid a visit to by a different scientific colleague named Dr. Pretorius, who doesn't waste any time. He shows up the same night that Henry Frankenstein is brought home. Late at night while he's still in bed, he shows up. He's fully aware of the fact that Henry Frankenstein created this monster, even though it appears that as far as the village knows, this monster just came out of nowhere. No one knows that that Henry Frankenstein created it. And Dr. Pretorius even uses that knowledge to basically kind of blackmail Henry Frankenstein into working with him. Yet, later in the film, when two villagers run across the monster, they say, that's the monster. He was created by Dr. Frankenstein out of the corpses of the dead.
Yeah.
And how did they know this? Because it's never really disclosed in the first film.
And why aren't people repulsed?
Exactly. Why aren't people now demanding that Dr. Henry Frankenstein be held responsible for these murders? That's exactly what Dr. Pretorius holds over Dr. Frankenstein's head, telling him, you are responsible for the murders that this monster committed. And so it's, like I said, weirdly inconsistent, but
another thing and it's from one movie to the next.
Yeah.
So I guess they didn't know at the time that they were going to be making this movie. But his original teacher who helped him in the first movie, in Frankenstein,
Dr. Waldman, yes,
mentioned that he had made these demands from the school and that they felt that they were ridiculous and inappropriate. Why didn't Dr. Pretorius approach Henry Frankenstein during the time that he was doing these experiments that were obviously mirroring what he was trying to do?
Yeah. I can kind of overlook that a bit because maybe they're both working on crazy stuff and they don't.
But that would be how he knew.
Yeah. I can. But you're right. You bring up another good point. That is a real inconsistency. But it was one that I could kind of just like, okay, whatever. To a certain extent, I don't like to get too nitpicky with films, but this film really kind of pushes that. Another really off-the-wall thing was after Dr. Pretorius basically holds this threat over Dr. Frankenstein and wants to show him his work. Dr. Frankenstein agrees. They go to Dr. Pretorius's home, which also, well, I guess it's not a castle. He still has his own mad scientist lair, basically. It looks an awful lot like where Dr. Frankenstein was conducting his business in the first film.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, yeah, why don't you come to my lair for a change? And he shows him his work. And he brings out these little bottles that have miniature human beings that have cartoon little squeaky voices that speak gibberish, but are dressed in full costumes and do not look like monsters. They just look like tiny little people. And all of a sudden, this is a completely different film. It seems really weirdly out of place. It's very comical. But I will say this, the special effects of the little people interacting with the larger props and the larger actors,
those are amazing.
All done with practical effects, is amazing looking. It's so well done throughout this whole film. So much of this film's special effects, sets, design, everything is so well done. And it may seem like I'm picking on this film, maybe, and that I'm being too nitpicky. I don't think I am, but I still really enjoyed this film. I enjoyed the last one too. A little bit more of the theme of, or what I feel is the theme of these two films, becomes more obvious in this second film. I mentioned in the last video that it feels like there's a lot of pathos that's kind of brought out a little bit in the first film. I think it's brought out more in the second film, where the monster itself is not evil. It's how he's treated that makes him evil. And
it's an action-reaction.
Yeah, and he's so persecuted in the first film and in the second film. He's so terrorized. Nobody will give him a chance, except, of course, the little girl that he accidentally kills, unwittingly kills in the first film. He does meet a blind stranger who offers him friendship. But as soon as the two hunters who are lost run across them, and those are the two villagers who say, oh, that's the monster, this creates a series of events which accidentally sets the blind man's home on fire, and of course that brief moment of kindness and friendship for the monster is ruined. And it's, you know, he's a tragic character, the monster. And, you know, the real theme, I think, of these films is man's unwillingness to accept the other, what's different, what's unusual, what's out of the norm. And this complete inhumanity, man's inhumanity to man, I think, is the real theme of these films. It's brought out a little bit more here, and there's a bit more of the tragedy that's played up, especially at the end of the film.
And I think that the director, who was openly gay, took advantage of the fact that he was, you know, and tried to, as a recipient of treatment, similar treatment,
Rejection for being different of the times, yeah. That's always a possibility. I had previously read that there are some film scholars who've given this film a gay reading, but I don't know if that was ever the director's intent. And there is a universality to the theme of man's inhumanity to man that could apply to the experiences of so many people beyond just this director. So I don't know. I'm not going to say that that's precisely what he was doing, but you make a point. And it's a point that others have made.
And it wasn't just the monster. Why was this poor blind man living alone with no friends?
Exactly. He was also...
It's a universal.
Yeah, he was also treated... He was also an outcast from society simply because he was blind. And he even says when he meets the monster, you can't speak. You must be afflicted like me. And maybe you hear the thunder and lightning right now.
And rain.
Yeah.
Now we have rain.
Yes, thunder, lightning, and rain. What perfect atmosphere for this film tonight. But yeah, I mean, I think at the ending of the film, of course, they create the woman for the monster, and this creature rejects him also. And so the monster basically decides to destroy all of them, but he lets Dr. Frankenstein leave with Elizabeth and says, "You live, we die." And he cries as he pulls down a lever that he knows will destroy them all. He sheds a tear. And so a lot more of that gets played up in this film. In spite of its weird inconsistencies, I still loved looking at this film. I thought it was visually stunning. I thought it built up to its climax really well. I felt it had a more satisfying ending than the first film.
Definitely, yeah.
I think these two films... I think the first film plays better when you watch the second film right after it. If you watch it as just one whole film, it plays a whole lot better, in my opinion. And that's how...
Even with the inconsistencies.
Even with the inconsistencies, yes. If you've never seen this before, I would recommend you watch it in that way. Watch both of them together in one night, or like we did, 2 nights in a row. Just watch it. Think of it like you're watching any miniseries, any series that's on streaming, where there's one full story arc. Look at it as one complete piece. And I think it plays a whole lot better when you watch it that way. But anyways, that's my reaction to watching Bride of Frankenstein for the first time. And anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, I think that they're both worth watching.
Oh, yeah.
With the inconsistencies.
Very entertaining.
There's a reason that they're classic.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. And just like I said, so visually powerful. But everybody, let us know what you think of these films, if you've seen them. And if you haven't, let us know if you plan to. And again, happy Halloween, everybody. I love Halloween time. I think I like it more than Christmas. I'm like Tim Burton in that respect. But we want to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment. And as always, if you like these videos, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the bell notification icon. And now, thank you, patron supporters, for all that you do. Patron supporters get exclusive. I always forget you're going to say that. Patron supporters receive exclusive weekly videos, not available here on the channel. And they also get their names in the credits. If you'd like to be a patron supporter, go to patreon.com/TJR the original. Pledge whatever you can. And every little bit helps. And we'll see you in the next video, everybody. Again, happy Halloween. Take care. Bye-bye.